Hello, welcome to Digital Works TV. I'm Steve Johnson. We have a special guest, astronaut Jan Davis. And I was trying to remember, should I call you a retired astronaut? I've got to read a whole bunch of stuff about you. Do you introduce yourself as, how do you introduce yourself?
I don't ever mention astronaut when
You
I
don't?
introduce myself.
Most people know that, right?
Around here they do.
Okay,
yes.
around here.
Yeah.
All right, but I've got to go over all this.
Yeah.
So, by the way, my greatest claim to fame is that Jan and I went to high school together. She was 2 years behind me, but still, we were in high school at the same time.
You were the big senior when I was a sophomore.
Yeah. I wish I'd have been a sophomore. Actually, I wish I was, born at, somebody mistakenly said I was born 10 years before I was, and I said, I'll take it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got, after Huntsville High, you got your bachelor's degree in applied biology at Georgia Tech. You went on to Auburn to get a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And then you were at UAH and got your Master of Science degree and PhD in mechanical engineering.
That's right.
You were an engineer by trade.
That's right.
All right. So you were at Marshall starting in '79. So that meant you were getting your master's and your PhD while you were working as an aerospace engineer at Marshall Space Flight Center.
Right.
You were in all kinds of things, including being working on the Hubble structural analysis team. You were the leader of that. You worked on the solid rocket booster, external tank connecting ring for the space shuttle. I mean, you did all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Not to mention becoming an astronaut in 1987. And flying on 3 shuttle missions and spending 28 days and change in space.
That's right.
So that makes you unique as far as I'm concerned. We went to high school together, remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about, just out of curiosity, when you got out of high school, did you think, going to be an astronaut?
No, when you and I were in high school, the space program was kind of going downhill because the Apollo-Soyuz was ending. The last one was in '75, but the Apollo program was ending. And so around here and in the space industry, people were being laid off, and nobody majored in aerospace engineering, including me in college. But even after I graduated in engineering it was a biomedical engineering degree from Georgia Tech. I never dreamed I would ever work for NASA because NASA wasn't hiring, and astronauts were all men. They were all military test pilots. It never was anything I thought possible until they started selecting women and non-military, non-test pilot type of folks for the space shuttle program. So, we had the pilots who were flying the shuttle, but then we had the mission specialists who were, what I say, doing all the fun stuff, the experiments and the...
Well,
so I didn't even think about it when I graduated college.
Okay, you got your degree at Georgia Tech. Did you always want to go on and get a... Did you... What caused you to go from just that Georgia Tech degree, or maybe you knew you always wanted to get your master's and PhD, but then you became a mechanical engineer, and then you got the master's and the PhD. Were you thinking astronaut at that point, or did you just really want to get advanced degrees? Apparently you liked college.
I like learning. I like school. I always, even growing up, I liked going back to school, after the summer. I just loved learning and enjoyed my courses. But I always felt like I would get my master's degree, even before, I even thought about astronaut. And so I went to UAH at night while I was working full time here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, and that was about the time they were picking the women to be astronauts. And so I thought, well, if I keep going and work on my PhD, then maybe that's something, I could try for. And NASA had this fantastic, the government, not just NASA, had this fantastic program where they would send you to school full time and pay your salary, and you didn't have to go to work during the day. You went to school full time was your job, and they still paid your salary. So that's how I was able to earn my PhD through NASA paying for this full-time study, which was fantastic opportunity. And I probably would not have gone through the pain of getting a PhD without the goal of becoming
Okay.
an astronaut.
So you were thinking about it.
Yes,
Once you went to Marshall,
definitely.
and they started
Yeah.
okay. Was it surreal when you were picked to be an astronaut? Were you like,
Yeah.
did it take a few minutes to sink in that I'm going to go to space?
Yes, because I first applied in 1984, and there were 5,000 other people who wanted to be an astronaut, and I was interviewed that year, and they only interviewed 128 people.
Wow.
They selected 15, and so I thought, maybe I have a chance. Since I was interviewed, that was a pretty good indication, but I wasn't selected that year, and so the next year I wasn't selected. They actually just picked from the pool they had interviewed. There was no separate interview in
Yeah.
85. And then the accident happened in 86, and I was working very hard on the redesign of some of the solid rocket booster to get us flying again. And so being an astronaut wasn't at the forefront of my mind, getting the shuttle flying again. And I honestly didn't think I'd get picked. I've been passed over twice, so I was interviewed and selected. So it wasn't surreal as much as it was surprise. I was just really excited about it and surprised. And Huntsville was really supportive and
Yeah.
excited because they had just been through the whole Challenger thing. And so there was a big send-off, and so it was exciting to think about flying in space.
Okay, so is it an understatement to say that now you had the education, you had the smarts, you had the learning, you had the hands-on experience? Was the actual astronaut training, and I've got to believe there's some things you have to do physically that are a little bit tough. Was that? Did you ever think to yourself, "Am I sure I want to do this," or was it just was it fun?
It was fun because, again, I like learning.
Yeah.
And the things that we had to learn, if you think about it, we had to learn things that you need to know when you're looking out the window of the shuttle or you're doing experiments on the shuttle. So we had classes in meteorology and oceanography. We had a geology field trip to New Mexico. We had astronomy and the planetarium, and we had experts from around the world come and teach us these things. And then, of course, learning about the shuttle and flying the Canadian arm on the shuttle and training for the spacewalks and all that was fun.
Yeah.
And then flying T-38 jets, and you
Did you become a pilot?
well, I am a pilot, so I was able to log co-pilot time.
Okay.
But not first pilot time.
Okay.
But nevertheless, flying in a transonic jet, so we had to do the survival, the water survival,
Yeah.
the land survival, the parachute training, all that was great. It was fun.
Was there anything you didn't like about it?
No, I really, it was a challenge, and physically as well. But, it's because I like learning. It was
Yeah.
just a whole new world, and the camaraderie was
Yeah.
great. It was a fantastic group of people. And so, very professional people, very teamwork-oriented
Yeah.
people. And so it was just a joy. And it was much more enjoyable than I ever imagined
Okay.
it would be.
Okay,
Yeah.
so am I correct that not every astronaut goes to space, that some of them never do?
Well, it depends. When you're selected, you have done the hardest part
Yeah.
in getting selected.
Yeah.
And so the only people who don't fly are if there's a medical disqualification
okay.
or if they do something really stupid.
Okay.
One of those two things.
Does anybody ever do anything really stupid?
Yeah. So anyway.
That's probably classified, though.
So it was pretty much once you got in, if
Okay.
you did your job well and stayed healthy and didn't have any chronic issues, health issues, then yeah, you'd fly.
Okay, so You didn't get to fly once. You got to fly 3 times.
Right.
Uh, and I don't know. I mean, I can't. I have no touchstone on this stuff. So first time you're on the shuttle, first time you're sitting on the pad, and I have covered shuttle launches before, and it is amazing how quickly it's out of sight. Like what,
Right.
17 seconds, it's gone as
Yeah.
far as observers.
Right.
It's moving fast, and I remember telling somebody. First of all, I can't believe goes up that fast, and second of all, I can't believe anybody's on top of all that flame. But that's watching it. What's it
Right.
like the first time you go up on a space shuttle?
Well, it's interesting because you just want to go do your job.
Yeah.
Is the way I looked at it. My first mission was a joint mission with the Japanese, so I had spent a lot of time in Japan. So they assigned us pretty far out before we flew. So it was actually 3 years of training on that mission before I flew. So you just want to get there and use all that training. And honestly, you're so busy leading up to the flight, and even during the countdown, which is you get in the shuttle, a couple hours before launch.
Yeah.
You're so busy that you don't think about the danger. You don't think about being scared. You don't think about what could happen. And in fact, there was a medical experiment I was participating in, so it measured my pulse and some other biological things, and my pulse rate and everything, it spiked right at ignition, and then it went just flat. So, my heart rate and all that stuff was pretty level.
Okay, so that's on the shuttle at launch. Are there butterflies or any fear at all, like the day before? I mean, do you think about it that way? I mean, the average person probably thinks about it that way, but do astronauts? I mean,
Not really.
things, you know the systems, you know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
you know what you have to do. Do you forget about that other stuff?
Well, you just don't want to mess anything up. That's what
Okay.
that's what the butterflies are for. You want to do your job and do it well,
Yeah.
and you don't want to mess up these experiments that these principal investigators have spent their life working on, and that kind of thing. That's what I was nervous about.
Yeah.
It's like when you drove here today. You didn't think about, well, I could be in a wreck and die. You just don't think about it because you've already accepted the risk. You've already accepted that could happen, so you don't think about it. And it's the same way for I think most of the people in the astronaut corps. They've accepted the risk when they decided they wanted to become an astronaut. They know what can happen, but it's worth the risk, and it's a risk they're willing to take, and so they don't think about it.
Okay, so you launched 3 times. Did a multitude? You had different duties, and if you think about your flights, it's first of all, does it impress you? Are you impressed with yourself that you spent 28 days in space? I mean, just a teeny bit. I mean, that makes you in a very small percentage of human beings.
Well, I'm proud of the fact that I did that, and I could have flown more if I'd wanted to, but I was ready to do something different. So 3 flights was good for me.
Well, when you think about your 3 flights, doing a multitude of different duties and responsibilities, what sticks in your mind? Is there anything that sticks in your mind that your favorite being on the shuttle in space memory?
Well, I think one of the best things are my crew. I mean, the crews that I had. The best memories are the times training with the crew and being on orbit with the crew. And secondarily, the science that we were doing, because we were training with scientists from around the world, and we had experiments from around the world on all 3 of my flights. They were international flights, and so that was really cool. And then I guess one of my favorite moments was when I saw Huntsville from space, because on my 3rd flight, I had never seen Huntsville from space, and we were the last pass over Huntsville on my 3rd mission, which I was pretty sure was going to be my last mission. And all of my crewmates had seen their hometowns from space, and we hadn't seen Huntsville. So I I was supposed to be exercising, and I said, I'm not going to exercise. I'll do that later. I'm going to go over Huntsville. And so every one of my crew members had a camera because we all wanted to make sure we got pictures of Huntsville. So it was a August morning. There was fog in the mountains, and it was just really exciting to see it. We were flying. It was an ascending pass. We were going over Jackson, Mississippi, then Birmingham, and so I knew we were close because I recognized Birmingham. You're going 5 miles a second, so you gotta know what's
17,500 miles an hour.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was very exciting to see Huntsville.
We have talked before. This is not the first time that we've done an interview, and I remember you saying, I believe that seeing Earth, not just Huntsville, but the Earth from space, sort of changed your feelings about some things. Could you talk about that a little bit? What seeing Earth from space? And I've read this. Several astronauts have commented on this, that they've kind of got to have an appreciation they did not have before.
Yeah, it's just striking to see the Earth from space. It's different than any photographs or video that you would see, even though those are spectacular nowadays, even more so than when I was flying. But two things really made an impression on me. One was how we all have the same home. You're going around the Earth in an hour and a half. And so you see all these countries and all these borders, and you think, wow, if everybody could have this perspective, maybe we could all get along, because you realize, we're neighbors. We're not from Huntsville or Alabama or United States. Yeah, that's it. We're all in this together. So that really made an impression on me, that we all have the same home. We're all from the same home, not a state or a country. So that was one thing. The other thing was, you realize how thin our atmosphere is. When you see that thin blue line of our atmosphere, there's not much protecting us from the vacuum of space and the blackness of space. And so same thing, we need to take care of our Earth. We need to take care of each other. We need to take care of our Earth. You do see some effects from people, pollution, things like that, water pollution, air pollution, and things we're doing, cross-cutting forests. And so, gosh, if we, again, had that perspective, maybe we would do more to take care of the Earth and the environment.
Okay. Looking back on your career, I mean, everybody can look back on their career, but I mean, considering, you have a Wikipedia page, okay? And there's lots of stuff on that.
but don't believe everything you read on Wikipedia.
It's like, I mean, you've been a lot of places, done a lot of things, been to space 3 times. I mean,
I'm very fortunate.
Is it strange to think of all that?
Yeah, well, I think about how blessed I am and how fortunate I've been. I've had great opportunities, and of course I've worked hard, to make those opportunities come true. But I had good parents, good home, good education, and wonderful supervisors who supported me, and teachers, and friends, family. And so I just think about how fortunate I've been. And I've walked through those doors that have been open, and some have been closed. You make the best of the opportunities you have. But I wouldn't change a thing. I really feel very fortunate to have had the opportunities I've had. And I'll say this, especially for the young people, it wasn't a straight line. It wasn't from here to being an astronaut or here being an engineer. I worked in the oil industry for a while. I had the biomedical engineering degree, and then I ended up in aerospace because NASA was hiring for shuttle. And so it's not always a straight path, but you can learn along the way. I learned from all those experiences. So, and I had failures. There are things I did not succeed at. So, you do read those
That's not in your
accomplishments,
Wikipedia page.
but it's not listed. But I don't mind talking about it. Say, hey, I didn't do
failures.
This. And,
Okay, let's talk about engineering for a second. You have your PhD in engineering. At different times, you were, for all practical purposes, a systems engineer. And we are very interested here at DigitalWorks in model-based systems engineering. Now, that really wasn't a thing when you were doing your engineering. But from what you know about it, about the idea of a systems engineer and modelers to do some of the work, I've got to believe you've thought, I hope you've thought more than once, oh, gosh, I wish we'd had that when I was working on some of these systems or problems and things like that. Or do you think about it like that?
I know my first foray into systems engineering was when I was working on Hubble Space Telescope, and I was in charge of some of the integration of input from different people, different disciplines on the design of the mechanisms that attach the instruments, the scientific instruments, to the Hubble. And so those are pretty complicated attachments because they had to be serviceable by astronauts. They had to meet the rigors of the thermal alignment requirements of Hubble, and so they were very complicated. So the systems engineering required for that involved a lot of things: design, thermal, materials, structures.
And every time anybody wanted to change anything,
it was all paper. It was just
and
all.
You went a lot of meetings.
A lot of meetings and a lot of drawings we had to go through and analysis all on the computer, but it was pretty tedious. So it would have been nice to have had that streamlined and not all paper.
So you could see it on. So if somebody changed something, you could see on your computer how it affected everything else.
That would have been great. So that was my first, experience with systems engineering, which was wonderful because I learned a lot about all these other different disciplines. But at the same time, it would have been nice to have streamlined it and made it more, like you say, more visual and easier to understand whenever we made a change, how that was going to affect everything.
Was it your education? And I mean, this is kind of a stupid question. Was it your education all the way up to your PhD in engineering, even the applied biology, the Georgia Tech bioengineering degree? Did it allow you or make it possible for you to work on all the different things you did, from working on the Hubble to doing experiments on the space shuttle? Did your education make it possible for you to have such a varied set of responsibilities?
I think the fact that I had the bioengineering, which was biology with a minor in engineering, but it also involved, as biology degrees do, organic chemistry and a lot of disciplines there. And then the mechanical engineering is a good general major because you have to take electrical, you have to take materials, you have to understand how all that comes together, structures, thermal. And so I think the diversity of my education helped not only with the selection to be an astronaut, but also the execution of the experiments, because I did life science experiments, material science. And so that vast background that I had, that circuitous path, ended up, and even working at an oil company where I learned a lot of geology and those kinds of things, that also came into play. So, you can learn from all these different things, and it just so happens that I had a job where I could apply all that stuff.
And I have to believe the variety of things you've done made your career. I'm sure it wasn't all fun, but I bet a lot of it was fun because you were doing new stuff all the time.
Yeah, it was fun. It was challenging. I enjoyed it. It was fun, and I was working on things that flew in space.
Yeah.
As an engineer, everything I worked on flew in space, and so that's very gratifying as an engineer to actually work on something that you can see come to fruition and be successful.
Any one thing you worked on that is like that's the one somebody asked you, what's your favorite thing you worked on? What would you say that was?
Well,
that didn't include flying in space.
Okay. Yeah, That's a good question.
Well, the Hubble.
I'm not sure.
and
The Hubble.
You worked on the Hubble, and at one point, I think I read that 25 or 35% of all discoveries, scientific discoveries made while Hubble was flying, were made by Hubble. The things we learned about our universe is amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised. So that was something I was very proud of, was working on Hubble. But I'll have to say, when I came back to Marshall after the astronaut
Yeah.
program and worked on the International Space Station work that Marshall was doing, and we designed, built, trained people to operate the Science Operations Center. We call it the Payload Operations Center here in Huntsville. A lot of people don't know that we have a control center.
Somebody's
for
doing
all
that
the
right
science. Yes, it's 24/7, and we train the astronauts. We write the procedures. We work with the investigators to make sure that the experiments get done correctly on the space station, and so we designed and built the ground systems and the operational part, the console operators, and that's been going on for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that we did that right here in Huntsville at Marshall Space Flight Center.
Okay. Don't want to let you go without talking about something else that I know you're proud of, because we've talked about it before. You've written 2 books.
Yes.
One about the parallel careers of you and your dad, who was my B-17 pilot, correct?
B-17 pilot, yeah.
And then you wrote another book recently published, which is kind of your dad's wartime diary and some other things, some
Right.
Different things. So, it's like, I can't wait to see what you do next. But talk about those books. What was it like doing that, which was a departure from working on the Hubble or working on anything else at Marshall Space Flight Center?
Yes, I'm an engineer, not a writer. But when my father first talked about, or the only time he talked about being a B-17 pilot, and he was shot down, was a POW for 22 months.
Yeah.
The only time he talked about that was when he showed me his wartime log, which is a blank book journal the YMCA and Red Cross provided to the POWs. And he did paintings and drawings and told stories in this journal. And he was thumbing through that journal and describing how he was shot down. And so I was trying to get my hands on that journal after he passed away. He passed away just before my first space flight, and I didn't even know who had it. And just through a series of events, I got in touch with my sister from his second marriage and asked her if she would send it to me. Well, I received it April of 2020. I had just retired, and COVID hit, and I was going crazy because I didn't have anything to do, really. And I read that journal again. I read it, the whole thing. I hadn't seen the whole thing before. And I realized that I needed to tell his story. And as I was doing research about that story, because he didn't talk about it, I had to do a lot of research. I realized the parallels between his career, flight training, the camaraderie he had with the people he flew with, and the teamwork, and the risk, the flying in combat, the risk I had. There were a lot of parallels. So that's why I decided to write about me as well in the first book. So it was very eye-opening for me. I learned a lot about him and what he went through, and about World War II aviation and the air war in Europe. And so it was very gratifying to write that and to learn about him and to tell his story. My original idea for a book was just to publish his journal. And because of all the artwork and also cartoons that he drew for the newspaper at Stalag Luke 3, we found
That's the prison camp where he was held.
Yes, the prison camp was Stalag Luke 3, and he had 96 of these original cartoons that I wanted to publish. So that was what I was going to do. But then the more I learned about what he went through, then I thought, no, there's more to the story than his journal. So the second book is is his wartime log and the cartoons he drew. And I explained what was going on because those things were censored by the Germans, and so he couldn't really say a whole lot about the prison camp. So I annotated what he wrote in the second book. So those are the two books, and the point of writing those was really to tell his story. So I'm thankful that they're published now and his story's told.
Any more books inside Jan Davis?
I don't know. I've always wanted to write a book for young adults, sort of an inspirational book and talking about the things that I've learned in my career that might be helpful to a young adult. And I'd like to write a kid's book somehow about my father's story and mine in a children's book. So.
Okay. Well, I think these sound possible. I mean, considering what you've done, in some ways, doesn't just about everything seem possible to you?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty stubborn, and I persevere through things. And when people tell me I can't do something, then I'll just say, okay,
you cannot
just watch.
write another book.
But I want to do an audio book also of the first book. So those three things on the horizon someday.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you for being with us, and
thanks for having me, Steve.
Taking up your time.
Yeah.
But like I said, we went to high school together. I have a connection.
That's right, we do. We won't say when, though, right?
Well, you could say when better than me. But anyway.
A few years ago.
But thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve.
All right. And thank you for being with us. And remember, it works.